My name is Wright. I am the voice of reason. I speak for the Last Crusade.
We have been fighting the wrong battle. The Last Crusade, like any other crusade, political movement, or military operation, must have clear strategic goals, not subject to change, and flexible tactics, which change as needed. This crusade promises to be successful where conservatism has failed and so-called right-wing identity politics is failing, because it recognizes where the real battle is and what is really at stake. It bears repeating that conservatism is a political movement and that identity politics is a cultural movement. The enemy disguised itself as a political movement called liberalism, but it was actually a cultural movement, and so when the conservatives expended efforts to drive it back on the political level, the results were an absolute failure. The long march of the cultural Marxists through Western cultural institutions, academia, media, news, destroyed the cultural loyalty to faith, to family, to patriotism, and to fatherhood. Even the most basic of cultural artifacts dating back to the Stone Age, the distinction between male and female social roles, has been invaded, inundated, and overthrown. The conservatives were fighting what they thought was a political battle, where they marshaled facts and arguments to support and defend political concepts like free markets and limited government. These arguments were never refuted because they were never addressed. So conservatives would look on in helpless frustration and anger as the self-defeating policies of the left, justified by nothing but long-dead, profoundly stupid, and easily exploded theories, nonetheless, without a single intellectual fig leaf to hide the shame of their nakedness, would be voted into practice and run the nation ever deeper into the quicksand of socialism and totalitarianism. The conservatives would use logic and facts to prove that the emperor had no clothes, and find themselves bewildered and alone as the emperor's tailors were showered with praise and rewards. What was happening was that the left did an end run around the right, avoiding facts and logic, where the right is strong, and taking it in the cultural flank, where the right is weak. If every television show portrays prenatal infanticide as being one and the same as women's liberation and women's health, then facts and logic showing prenatal infanticide is horrid, sinful, and wrong are equated with advocacy favoring female slavery and sickness. The right, which takes it as an unquestioned axiom that cultural matters are to be handled in the private sphere and not the public, would not and could not understand the degree to which a political organization motivated by long-term cultural goals could and did influence the culture and win the moral high ground. The right offered facts and logic. The left offered folk songs. The left put a gay man in comedy shows and portrayed them as victims, not of sin and perversion, but of bigotry. The left had Walter Cronkite declare the war lost when the war was won. And so the war was lost, and sodomy was made legal. And Christians were forced by law to aid and abet sodomites perform satanic mockeries of the sacrament of marriage, and capitalism was replaced by a slowly imploding welfare state. The First Amendment no longer grants the right not to be assaulted in broad daylight by a mass rioter or Berkeley professor on the grounds that Nazi speech is not free speech but hate speech. And everyone not to the left of Karl Marx is suddenly a Nazi. One cannot change a man's mind unless his heart allows it, but one cannot change a man's heart unless his soul allows it. In the same way politics is downstream of culture, culture is downstream of religion. In the same way a man's actions are dependent on his beliefs are dependent upon the primal and fundamental assumptions of faith that form his character. These fundamental assumptions of faith spring out of religion rather than race. That is almost too obvious to argue. The genetic admixture of peoples in the Roman Empire before and after Constantine was the same, but no pagan society in the history of the world, east or west, ever abolished slavery, required the consent of the bride to marriage, abolished polygamy, abolished gladiatorial games, established hospitals and founded universities, and created a theory and form of government devoted to protecting individual rights. Even the vaunted democracy of Athens or the Republic of Rome protected collectivist social orders only. Were the rights of the individual, such as freedom of speech or of faith, respected? The testimony of Socrates and of Christ shows no such freedoms existed then. Christianity entered Europe, but no new genetic strains, and produced the medieval and modern concern for the individual soul. On the other hand, no race of man has more assiduously resisted race mixing than the Japanese. But before exposure to Christendom, they had polygamy, slavery, and totalitarianism just like every other heathen people. They have not interbred with Europeans, but Christian notions of monogamy, voluntary marriage, liberty, equality, and limited government now rules their islands. These ideas did not come to them through an admixture of alien bloodlines containing an alleged monogamy gene. Examples could be multiplied endlessly. On the other hand, the counterexamples of races who refuse to assimilate and who cannot be westernized turn out to be examples of a perversion of some Western notion that has gained control of the fundamental assumptions of faith of a diverse group of races. Hence, it is not an example of a racial identity. Socialism, for example, is a perversion of Western political notions, even in China, where over 40 races live under one. Likewise, Mohammedanism is a perversion of Christianity, where many races from Indochina to the Middle East to Northern Africa, from Cassius Clay to Cat Stevens, are unified by their faith. The reason why racial identity politics must and will fail in America is that racial identity politics is merely one more simplistic ideology. Marxism is simplistic. The capitalist is always the devil, the poor and oppressed prole is always the angel. Feminism is simplistic. The male is always the devil, the female is the angel, and the lesbian is the archangel. Social justice is simplistic. The white man is always the devil, and the non-white is always the angel. The idea of merely swapping the values from positive to negative and making the whites the angels and the minorities the devils does not eliminate the fundamentally simplistic, stupid, unchristian, and un-American nature of this ideology. Conservatism, on the other hand, as it stands now, which is the political stance based on Anglo-American liberties and duties, based on Greek philosophy of rationalism, and based on the Christian view of all men as brothers and all life as worth respect, cannot prevail over leftist totalitarian brain-dead brainwashing ideology, simply because this ideology is a religion and not a political stance. Political stances are derived from cultural values in much the same way that practical engineering and mechanics are derived from science. You cannot build a practical and working steam engine while ignoring the gas laws in favor of the theory of phlogiston. The abstract science defines the practical engineering, in other words. For this reason, simple identitarian policies cannot be adopted by the new right or alt-right or whatever they wish to call themselves. By the same token, old-school conservatives will lose every election from now until doomsday. You cannot maintain a right-wing political institution in a land dominated by left-wing culture. If the news, called out by the town crier, the chatter of celebrities in the public theater, and the games in the public arena, all support left-wing cultural values, then sober speeches in the public town hall will mean nothing. The right, up until now, thought it rude and divisive to utter serious political truths in public or to base political ends on spiritual realities. So they did nothing about Hugh Hefner, nothing about no-fault divorce, nothing about contraception, and left the little sisters of the poor to fend for themselves. The right were ashamed to speak the truth, and so they met the lies of the left with silence. They brought a knife to a gunfight, hence they lost all their battles. Make no error. Leftism is a cult. It is a religion. It is a religion that scorns the idea of monotheism in favor of worshipping Caesar and Mother Nature. It is a religion that, instead of forbidding these things, preaches and glorifies lust and selfishness, envy and wrath, and the pride of Satan. And the Eucharist is its rite of abortion. From lust, we have the sexual revolution. From selfishness, the idea of moral relativism. From envy, socialism. From wrath, we have riots, race riots, Antifa, and Black Lives Matter, and Occupy Wall Street. The leftist allows you to loot, to burn, and to murder, all in the name of a good cause. From satanic pride comes the virtue signaling and self-esteem and self-righteousness movements, and all the smirking of empty-headed dolts congratulating themselves on their wits, moral retards congratulating themselves on their moral superiority, and fools calling themselves wise. Leftism is powered from the darkest and most tenacious sins in the human soul, and it allegedly offers utopia. It makes every minor squabble and kerfluffle into a righteous and noble jihad in the name of social justice. Leftism offers a meaningless life a higher meaning. A lonesome soul, it offers companionship with like-minded members of the rabbit warren. Undue compliments and self-esteem, unearned self-righteousness, and an excuse to carry on with whores and sodomites, an excuse to blame others for all your own shortcomings, an excuse to hate the rich and kill them and take their stuff, and an excuse to burn down black neighborhoods. Leftism offers freedom from all moral codes, in return for an absolute and unwavering loyalty to total falsehoods, to deception, and to nauseating untruth. These are temptations as powerful as the main guns of a top-of-the-line battle tank. Now, next to such primordial and powerful governors of the human spirit as lust and envy, wrath and pride, race loyalty is a dim and distant third influence, provincial and of no account. To oppose this, let us finally begin on the right footing, and no more bring pistols to a tank battle. So if the news called out by the town crier, the chatter of celebrities in the public theater, and the games in the public arena all support pro-white and pro-Western cultural values, but the voices of all the pulpits and omnipresent Church of Antichrist, supported by the left, contradicts them, then the voices of the news and the celebrities will mean nothing. You cannot beat a religion with a culture, for culture depends on religion and is derived from it. In this case, you cannot erect an alt-right white culture in a land ruled by left-wing Caesar-worshipping religion. Caesar worship requires that all races be divided against each other so that no one group has enough local loyalty to overthrow Caesar. Aiding this division of races one against the other, in this case, only aids Caesar. We in the Last Crusade are fighting a spiritual war, a battle against powers and principalities and the unseen supernatural rulers of this fallen world. We cannot win a spiritual war with cultural weapons for the same reason we cannot win a cultural war with political weapons. We are in the last ditch. All battles are lost and the war is in its last hour. Defeat is that close. We must stop bringing knives to gunfights and stop bringing pistols to tank battles. It is time to bring in the nuke. Answering lies with silence is a proper reply for a Buddhist who renounces the world. Answering lies with more lies is a proper reply perhaps for the pagan whose cynical and melancholy fatalism knows nothing better. The answer of the Christian martyr, however, is the one answer no one can silence. It is time to bring in the truth.